Lamar being out, I have no idea what's going on with Lamar. I'm prime Lamar fan, like huge Lamar fan. I have a Lamar Jackson t-shirt. It's the only non-Giants player t-shirt that I have in the like I am a huge Lamar Jackson fan. He seems to be holding himself out. Like he had a PCL sprain, and that was 5 weeks ago. I think if he was not playing for his contract, he'd be playing. And my sense is the Ravens are going to get sick of this shit, dealing with him without an agent. He's wants to be paid more than Deshaun Watson. They're not willing to do that because that contract screwed up everything in the NFL, and they're going to tag him and trade him to the Miami Dolphins.
I'm curious though if that's the case with him being basically close to being healthy, because that would also make me think that that's happening in the sense of I could see if maybe there's a frustration because if that's the case where he's like basically where he's like closer to healthy than in terms of the spectrum of an injury of like after being held out for this long, and Tyler Huntley, their backup, is also out. I think that would pose a huge level of frustration for the team that he wouldn't. Because, and I'm not, this is not me condoning players playing hurt, but I think sometimes players do kind of have the feeling of wanting to get in there, especially for a playoff game, even if they're not fully 100% doing it anyways. And especially when the option is Anthony Brown, it's not even Tyler Huntley, who kind of, while clearly, well, of course, not even remotely as talented as
Good
Lamar,
backup.
has the same kind of play style as Lamar.
That's the best way, by the way, to structure a backup quarterback situation is to get a guy, doesn't need to be a huge talent, but somebody who can mimic the playing style at a poorer level of your starting quarterback. But I see it from Lamar's perspective. He does not want to further injure himself in a contract year. I see from the Ravens' perspective that maybe they feel like, okay, I don't necessarily want a guy who isn't all in and willing to kind of have that competitive drive to push himself back into a playoff situation. What I do know is that the vibes between these two parties are not good. I was jokingly saying they'll tag and trade him to the Miami Dolphins, but do you think Lamar Jackson's a Raven next year? I don't. I don't think so. Given his contract demands, which I think I saw Dave Zirin who I respect a lot, was tweeting about how players not having agents is like a player empowerment thing. I don't know if that's true. Like the way that this is shaking out, Lamar might never get his payday, and I was begging him to take that contract like earlier in the year when it was offered to him. That would have been something that would have set him up for generations, and he would have gotten his payday. But I just don't see it. I don't see this working out with him and the Ravens because after this year, they're certainly not going to give him what he's asking for. And that makes me very sad. I've said this before. The Ravens are my favorite AFC team. I love the way that organization runs. I love the fact that they let their players play and be themselves. I love the fact that they took a chance on Lamar when these racist idiots like Bill Polian were in the media saying that he was a running back or a wide receiver or whatever bullshit. He and Josh Allen were clearly the two best quarterbacks in that draft. I was early on that because I was at that time following Chris Sims pretty closely, and he was high on those guys. And I was like, this is better than Sam Darnold. Darnold? Those two guys have elite traits. Darnold? What's he got? So whatever. But at the same time, it's a sad situation. I don't think it's going to get repaired. I really don't.
So the concern I have is that, per what you're saying, like, I appreciate a guy like Lamar wanting to bet on himself and like represent himself and like hold out for the money that he believes that he deserves. But I don't think it's necessarily like a capitulation to have an agent that is not only completely literate and professionally has the professional expertise to fight for every last dollar for you in a contract,
where you don't have to worry about it in season. You can just do your job.
Where you're only basically sweating your play and sweating how you can maximize your play during the season, as opposed to thinking I have to be doing all of this rides on me also by week by week, kind of week by week essentially trying to evaluate your stock in these negotiations, whereas an agent will be doing that for you. Like I I totally like I understand the part of like the player empowerment tack of that to an extent, but at the same time I don't want him, like you said, to be screwed because he's overvaluing that aspect of representing himself at the expense of actually just getting the money he deserves.
It has been a bad track record for players who have represented themselves
Yeah,
so
like
far.
Russell Okung, I think did. He won. You know, I mean, that might have been a little.
Richard Sherman did
Richard,
with the
yep,
49ers, and that contract was dog shit and like widely maligned by a lot of people because at that point Sherman was on the decline but still had a lot of clout. Um, they're about to deal with this with Roquan Smith, who does not have an agent.
right.
And
He did.
they're,
He
they
got
did
signed though, I think. Right? Didn't Smith get the extension?
you might be right. You
Yeah.
might be right.
And he got a he to his credit.
10 hours ago.
Yeah, he to his credit.
Okay.
He to his credit got a big one, which is good. I mean, great. Happy for the guy. Love him.
Yeah.
Want him to get all the money. But at the same time, speaking of directly to the situation, the Ravens just signed Roquan Smith to be the highest paid linebacker, I think, in league history. That's money that's also not going to a
Oh,
Lamar
yeah.
Jackson extension.
There's no chance. I just feel like I see a tag and trade coming.